Okay. Looks like we can go ahead and get started. I'll just introduce Jimmy real quick for you all, and then I'll let Jimmy take the lead on this webinar. So first off, just want to start off this webinar by saying thank you from the Pac-Dent and Argon teams for attending this webinar and wanting to learn more about these products. It's our pleasure to introduce Jimmy Stegall. He's a CDT, and he brings more than 4 decades of experience in technical operations, laboratory management, and clinical education. He spent 35 years leading a prominent Southeast dental laboratory and is a published author, key opinion leader, and founder of Here to Serve Dental. Jimmy was recognized as the 2024 NADL Educator of the Year and serves on the National Board of Certification and continues to advance digital and implant prosthetic techniques through education and consulting across the Americas. Please join me in welcoming Jimmy Stegall.
Thank you, Andrew, and hello, everybody. Thanks for hanging out. One of my most favorite topics to talk about is digital dentures. I tell everybody all the time, and it's hard to believe my first 2 weeks in the dental lab, I couldn't wait to get out of the denture department. I wanted to be a ceramist. So here we are. So again, thanks for having me. I am still providing training, lots of requests for digital denture training in labs and virtually. So if you want to chat about that, reach out to me directly. But we're going to talk specifically about the denture-based 2.0 workflow that I use, that I truly believe is the simplest, most efficient, most effective, most predictable digital denture workflow out there, and is centered around some chemistry that's just I see as amazing. And everybody knows where I'm from and the materials I came from, and they're no slouch, but this keeps up with it really well. So, when we talk about dentures and we talk about doing dentures, you look at the population in the U.S. and it's a lot of people, and there's a lot of people in the age of dentures. And the biggest part of that bubble is moving into current time right now. In the next 10 to 12 years, we're going to drastically see an increase of the request for dentures just because of the sheer number of bodies out there. And, 40% in that age is nothing to sneeze at. But I look at the other generations as well, and I tell labs all the time, this is the generations that you look at for your technicians to train, because we all know that it's hard to find those technicians, but these are the folks that aren't afraid of the computer, aren't afraid of the mouse. They get excited about CAD/CAM technology. And so, I think there's a big resource there for us that we can use, as we grow and scale. And so 36 million edentulous arches now, and it's expected to be over 200 million in 12 to 15 years. And so, yeah, we're not going to have a shortage. And dentists are going to be busy as ever because we aren't graduating as many per capita as we used to, again, due to the population bubble. So, it's certainly a challenge. But as far as we're concerned as technicians, this is our bigger challenge. And, that's the number of labs. This is a little even new date for me. When I started in, that's a long time ago, there were 16,000, 17,000 dental labs. And, we're under 6 now, last I heard. And somebody expected it or estimated that we're going to drop as low as 2 to 1,000 labs in the country. And there's a lot of consolidation. Obviously, you can drop 46% in number of labs, but still only have 9.5% fewer technicians due to the consolidation. But it's a problem. Any way you look at it, this is a problem of finding the people to make the teeth. If I wanted to start a lab tomorrow and make analog dentures, finding, a tooth setter, a waxer, somebody that knows how to invest in process and finish and polish, that finding those people, that's be tough, just tough. And digital just gives us a tool that allows us to do it easier. I've always said it, that give me somebody to train how to set teeth in the analog world, and I'll have them independent in 2 years. Give me, somebody that's comfortable with the computer, that may even have a little bit of, scanning models, basic designing of trays or something in 3Shape, and I'll have them designing dentures in 2 months. And it's just that easy of a tool to help us integrate. So we have to just open our mind. And, the question a lot of time becomes, why were there 17,000 labs when you started, and why they're now less than 6? And I think a lot of it's due to people's unwillingness to change, or inability to change due to time or money constraints, whatever. But we got to change, guys. I mean, and we're not going to be able to keep up otherwise. So, got to keep an open mind and look at what's out there. And so, if the number of patients are growing, the number of dentists are growing, but not enough to keep up with the number of patients, but the number of technicians is dropping, that's a crisis, and this is not going to go away anytime soon. And so, we've got to figure out how to deal with it. And we look at the way we used to do it. And this is not far fetched from where I started. This is not where I was, but it didn't look much differently from that. As a matter of fact, I think in the time this was probably an advanced lab with those injection flask or pressurized, compression things over there. But more often when I look at dental labs today, I see clean, modern, but they're still technicians, right? They're still sitting at a bench, and there's somebody that's opening a drawer and picking a cart of teeth. And that somebody has to know how to put that tooth or those teeth on that ridge. And then somebody's got to be, good enough to carve and shape and festoon that wax. And then, there's somebody's got to know how to invest and process. And, there's still a lot of press packing, but there's also a lot of injection. The Ivo base, Ivo cap, other injection systems are certainly prevalent, and they're great, but they're not easy, and somebody's got to know how to do it. And if that's done improperly, then you get stone in the acrylic, and all that's got to be cleaned out, and it's tough. And those are what we're doing. I still estimate 60-70% of labs are still making dentures this way. And this is just a challenge, finding somebody that knows where exactly to place those teeth, and then finding somebody that's artistic enough to carve and shape that wax properly. And again, finding a good investor processor that don't, get the plaster broken off and, mess up the acrylic. All these things are challenges. And of course, we're also looking at steps in the process where something can go wrong almost every single step with stone and wax and boiling water and overnight curing. And just the variability of this process, just creates a situation that we've learned to deal with, of course. And, we make do, and we make great products, using this technology, but it's limited to itself. No matter how good we are, that acrylic's going to shrink, somewhere between 6 and 8%. And, we got to deal with that, and we try to deal with it various ways, and the reality is dentures just don't fit as good as they should. And that's where digital really comes in. And I think, having a better fit is the biggest win right off. Now, I was a technician, and I was a technician in all the departments, but, this is a running joke with me. I was determined to be the lab's most okay as dental technician. So I got moved into sales and customer support and chairside support and then management leadership. And, when I started, helping develop systems and protocols to make the lab run more efficiently, I was open to anything in digital, and we embraced early in a lot of different ways. And I measured everything. And, when we looked at a new process or a new product that somebody was trying to sell us, I always put it under these categories, right? Was my labor cost a big one? How much time, is the workflow and the throughput and scalability? Am I going to be able to get things through? Do I have enough room to do it? And then, of course, the last one, which everybody talks about first, is the materials and the overhead. So you look at all these things, you say, okay, it's a good option to try. So we plan, we execute, and we measure. I measured everything. I have spreadsheets that, counted every minute, every time, every grain of product, so that, the goal was to end up with a system that told me exactly what it cost us to make a crown or a denture or a partial. And so, I read a book early on that said, what gets measured gets done. So watching the tasks in our laboratory, of model work, of setting teeth, of waxing, and of investing in processing, and then finishing, I come up, there's 5 people involved in our process. And after several years of just timing people, not because I wanted to say to people, look, you got to do this in 5 minutes, not 10 minutes, or you got to do 30 a day instead of 20. That wasn't what it's about. What it was about was, what are we capable of doing? We make a pretty good product. let's see what we're capable of doing, how many we're capable of doing, and then what that cost us. And after many years and thousands of cases, because we were doing 100 dentures a day, so it was easy to compile a lot of data. This is what I came up with. On a traditional workflow, and we were press packing for a long time. We switched to AvaCap, and it didn't change much time-wise, but about an hour and a half of hands-on time total to make a denture, one arch. And that amounted to a group of 5 could make 24 dentures a day. So that was our target. Every team of 5, again, model person, setup person, wax person, invest in process person, and finish person. The goal was to let's invoice 24 arches. Now, sometimes we did 20 or 18. Sometimes we did 30, and everybody in the world, in the dental lab world, knows that some days are better than others. Some cases are problematic, and that's just what you deal with. And the whole goal here was to come up with an average or a target. And so that became our target, 24 a day, and then just start adding teams of 5. So, the first 5 could do 24, the second 5, now we're doing 48, and so on. And so, I had that many people doing that, and these might be a year or two behind, but I get my labor rates from L&T's lab salary survey. They do every couple of years. And so when you track it down to the minute, and then how many hours it takes for, like, the model guy to do 24 arches for those dentures, it's really only 4 hours. So does he go home? No, he goes and helps the investor processor. So the investor processor don't have to work 10 hours to do 24. The whole goal is that these 5 people work 8 hours. And so that 24 is based on an 8-hour day. And there's some trade-off of and helping, waxer helps the setup guy, so on and so forth. But at the end of the day, we've got 8 hours of work to do 24 dentures. And so it's an hour and a half, per arch. We're selling our standard denture at $364. And so when you add up all the labor, the overhead, lights, water, everything to run the lab, and then the materials, my cost was about $155 per denture, and we were selling at $364, so we're making just over $200 in profit. And there's nothing wrong with that, right? That's a profitable business, and you could do that tomorrow and be okay as long as you've got the 5 people. If you want to grow to do 24 more arches, then you got to go find those 5 people again, and that's, again, the big challenge. So that's our baseline. And so we've established that the number of labs and number of technicians are dropping. Lab revenue's dropping, right? I think not so much in dentures. Denture is a product that we were able to increase the price every year. But in, the big items where, doing 150 zirconia crowns a day, I can remember starting those and they were easily $185. And now most around the world, you're paying 100 or less for a zirconia crown. So the revenue is dropping, and we have to make up for that in volume or different things. And people ask me all the time, why is this happening? Why does it keep happening? Why are we racing to the bottom? I said, well, some people just feel like they can get more work if they lower their price. Never works, by the way. And there's a lot of consolidation going on, but digital shifts got a lot to do with it. And certainly, offshore globalization has something to do with it. But one thing that we all agree on, we don't have enough people. Right? The number one issue with labs around the country and throughout the world, I think, is that not being able to find the people. So we have to really think about our mindset and say, okay, digital might be the answer. And so the question becomes, how do I move from press packing to printing my dentures? And that's why we're here. And this is, to me, if somebody calls and say, look, I'm a Crown and Bridge lab, and I want to expand my services and I want to add digital dentures, can you show me how? So, yeah, I can. And it's actually pretty easy. And there's some awesome materials out there. And this workflow is going to be your easiest entry point. And, besides getting great materials, your hands-on time is lower and all of that. So let's compare the two for a second. If that's what I just showed you, right? And so I'm making a little over $200 per denture. If I'm doing 24 a day, that means I'm generating, $8,700, take off my costs and, $5,000 a day, gross profit. The only thing that I haven't taken out of that number is taxes, depreciation, and interest, the EBITDA number. So that's a good number. And 57.5% gross profit is a good number. There's nothing wrong with that. Again, we can make good living at that. But I want you to look at digital using the Pac-Dent Rodin materials. So, the cost, what was it before? 155 labor and materials. And here it is, half of that. Most of that's labor, by the way. The material cost is not a whole lot different, but somewhat different. And if you can do something in 55 minutes that took you an hour and a half to hour and a 45 yesterday, then clearly you can do more of them. And simply by, learning a new skill and instituting a new system. And that moves the gross profit to almost $300. And now we're into territory that we've very rarely been in the dental lab space. The ability to make that level of profit percentage. I tell folks all the time, every time I look at this slide, I think about opening up a lab again, and it's going to be digital dentures only. And, give me 4 other people and we can do, 32 to 36 arches a day with a couple of printers and some bottles of resin and, some software. And it's just unbelievable how this helps us. And it's easier to teach and train. It's easier to scale. And somebody called me out, I don't know, a couple of months ago, said, well, do you have your printer cost figured in there? I said, no, I don't. Let me plug that in. So if I take my example of 4 other people and I go buy a Stegall Ultra and a Stegall Max, for 12 months, that's going to cost me $98 a day. So we're going to take $98 a day out of that $10,496 profit to pay for those printers. In 12 months, that'll get added back in. But, when you look at that and you think 80% gross profit, that's just unheard of in a prosthetic. And in most prosthetics, I think maybe repairs you could do that, but this is incredible. And I don't know why more people don't jump on it. I mean, I know there's a lot of talk in the market about digital dentures are crap. And I get it that we do see some that are crap. But when somebody says, I just don't think they're any good, I said, I just think you might be looking at the wrong system. Because there are materials out there that are better than the acrylic we used to make. And I believe that, and I would only do that. I've got nothing against analog. We know that it works, and God bless you that can do that really well. I can remember getting screamed at the first 2 weeks of the lab for over polishing dentures. Jimmy, you slicked another daggum tooth, and it's just hard, right? And finding people to do it is out there. So the Rodin denture base, Stegall is, kind of the core, but they're validated in a lot more printers. So there's plenty of printers, to look at and are usable. That's one of the things that Pac-Dent has done well, is that they understand that, we want to use different technologies, and they're good at that. Here's where the success, when people say, I got it, but I'm just not doing many. And I'll tell you over and over again, training is key, right? Whether you come to one of the on-site trainings or, whether you get me to come in the lab and work with your people directly, whether you do virtual training, it's key. You got to understand the process, and you can't cut corners. You have to do things properly. When people say digital dentures are crap, that is one reason that they might be seeing it, is they're not doing it exactly right. If you don't cure them right, if you don't use the right printer, if you don't use the right curing unit, and of course, some materials aren't really good, but you got to use the right materials, and you got to, put them all together properly. And so training is key. And you want to get that training wherever you get it. And so the Rodin system is an ecosystem that has lots of different moving parts and pieces. But I can tell you that in the Pac-Dent Rodin dentures that I do, I'm 99% denture base 2.0, Titan, and the N2F glaze. Those are my products. I occasionally will grab the palette kit for customization. I hardly use the sculpture to do teeth anymore. I'm pretty much settled on Titan for various reasons. I like it. It feels good. It cures good. It's got eight or nine shades, 7 or 8 shades, and I haven't had a problem. One time I think I had to darken up a tooth, but most of the times, Titan, and you can get it in half-liter bottles, so you don't always have to have, a big 1 kilogram bottle. This palette kit is a good thing to have on hand. I reach for this quite often to shade teeth or to paint a try-in, which I will also print out of Titan. So the palette kit has pinks, purples, grays, blues, browns, a base A, B, C, and D shades. And you just get what you need. Again, I'm not the artistic one. I just pretty much need to make something pink, and I'll try to get creative with different layers and whatnot. But there's not much easier these days, than squirting out some pink stuff and painting it on a Titan monolithic denture to make it look better. So use this on all the printed try-ins monolithic that we do, or the implant all-on-X prototypes. They're great for that too. But I love the palette kit for that. And every time I get a chance, I tell people, look, if you're interested in this kit, you ought to get this manual that Pac-Dent did. It is one of the best things I've seen done for technicians. It gives you the recipe, the step by step. If you want to make this tooth look like this, then paint this on and paint this on and paint this on. And it's my kind of manual, because it's something that a dumb old redneck can understand, and make something look a little better. So thanks to them for doing that. And you can get that for free before you purchase. Here's another supporting product that I love to use with the Pac-Dent materials. As we all know, we use isopropyl alcohol 99% to clean most of our stuff. But if you don't know, using it improperly on our denture bases, you'll get these white spots, and it can be frustrating. So 99% IPA has to be clean, has to be brand new, has to be fresh, and it's flammable, and it stinks. And you can't ship it the way we want to ship it, and it has issues. Well, last year, Rodin introduced their universal resin cleaner, which is a different type of solvent. It's not alcohol based. It's non-flammable, doesn't have an odor, store it any way you want. A little bit more expensive than alcohol, but you can use it multiple times without worry of residue getting into your product, because it's a glycol type. It's thick. So, and it's a very efficient cleaner. So I use it on all the Rodin denture base. I use it on all the Titan, which is a big win. This was one of the things that aggravated me about Titan, Sculpture, and the other ceramic filled resins out there. When we started cleaning with isopropyl alcohol, we would often get this chalky surface, and learned quickly that you can't immerse those in 99% IPA. You have to take a brush or a towel and dampen it with alcohol. You just can't put a lot of alcohol on it. And so cleaning 3 segments of teeth for a denture with 99% IPA, when I printed out a Titan, was not in my wheelhouse. I did not have the patience to sit there with the brush and wipe and scrub and wipe and scrub and wipe and scrub. So I want to drop it in a jar of liquid, take it out a minute or two later, and it be clean. The good news is the universal resin cleaner does that for us. You can drop it in that liquid, whether it's teeth. Here's a couple of looks like implant prototypes I did, and I'm just putting some of the universal cleaner in a jar and drop it in the ultrasonic for a minute or two, and it comes out, and you can rinse it off, but you really don't. And I'll give it a quick scrub if I see any bits and pieces, but you can see there that I don't have any of that chalkiness, and it's soaked in that stuff for a good solid minute and a half. And I can usually get it done in 1 bath, but sometimes it takes 2, depending on, how much residue is left. But I love the resin cleaner for that. I mean, besides being non-flammable, easy to store, easy to ship, affordable, I have used a jar of that stuff 6, 7 times. And I honestly think I could have kept on to 8, 9, or 10, which is what somebody at Pac-Dent told me once. But I mean, I just got nervous and tossed it and started over. So I love it. I absolutely love it. It's more expensive, but if I can use it 5 or 6 times, then it becomes cheaper than IPA. So definitely an ancillary product that they make, part of their ecosystem that I use. So let's talk about the workflow, right? If you want to get involved in making digital dentures, these are the steps, right? You're going to design them, or you can outsource that. There are plenty of options out there that folks will design your dentures, send you the STLs for you to print. Then you're going to print them. After printing, we're going to clean them. Then we're going to assemble them, right? Which means we've got to smooth the supports. We got to, get them all cleaned up again. Then we'll fuse them or tack them in place. Then we'll put some sort of glaze on it. Then we'll cure it. You can also have the option of finishing and polishing traditionally. So, designing is just efficient. right? The tool is just an efficient tool, something that doesn't take away anything from any setup technician. All the moles we know and love are there. You just have to learn how to use the tool to put the teeth where you want them, how you want them. But I'm a fan of the libraries. Find a library you like, and I don't have to worry about occlusion a lot or setup a lot. And I may tweak it. You'll see me doing minor movements here. But here's the beauty of it. This full over full, and I don't have the video showing the wax up screen, but because it's almost automatic, full over full from when the scan is entered and the case is set up to when I'm exporting the STLs was 27 minutes. And that's my target. I want to be able to design a case and have it ready for printing in 20 to 30 minutes. Now, a single arch would probably take me the same amount of time because a single arch is not opposing its library partner, it's opposing whatever it is, and you have to do a lot more tooth movement. But that's the target, is that when you're learning how to design dentures, you want to shoot for that 30-minute design time and just practice. That's all it takes, is that you got to design a case every day, whether it's real or not, and get used to the tools to get them to do what you want them to do. I lean on the tools a lot to do most of the heavy lifting and move on, right? I'm not going to fiddle around with it. But if you're a technician that wants to fiddle around with it, the tools are there. And you may take 45 minutes to design yours, but you know, it'll be maybe more yours than what the library intended to be, which is fine. So once we have them designed, right, we're going to print them. And once we print them, we're going to clean them. And then we're going to start to assemble. So let's go through the workflow step by step. And you don't need a lot of stuff, right? These are the two instruments that I use. I use a Wagner Aeroflex superfine wheel. That's the red one in a 3.5 millimeter thickness. And the black one is a fine wheel in a 5 millimeter thickness. The black one I use on the denture base. The red one I use on the denture teeth. And that's just what I use to smooth all those supports. The little micro wire cutters is what I use to cut the T-bars off, because T-bars are still required during printing. But here's big win number one with the Rodin denture-based system, mainly because of the way we cure it, is that we do not have to leave the T-bars on during curing. Some people do, but I have had minimal distortion when I cure these things in the auto flash. So I decided one day that I'm going to cut the T-bars off ahead of time. Ahead of time meaning I've printed it, I've cleaned it, and now I'm ready to put the teeth in it, but let's get it ready. Let's smooth everything up, including the T-bar supports. So that's the way I do it. So, you know, I take the little micro cutters and I just get the T-bars out of the way. Now remember, this is printed, cleaned, but not fully cured yet. So I'm not going to squeeze it a lot. It's not really distortable. It's about 85% cured out of the printer, but I'm just going to be a little cautious. I'm going to use light pressure, and I'm not going to generate a lot of heat. I'm about 10,000 RPMs. And I said I used the black wheel, and there I am using the red wheel because I don't know. I just wasn't paying attention. The black wheel is more efficient. I'm just going to eat up my red wheel faster when I do that. So again, nipping the T-bars off, you know, getting that wheel and just smoothing those supports down. So I'm smoothing the T-bar supports. You know, if I needed to do more festooning or contouring or, you know, smoothing print lines, I could do that there as well. But again, I mainly use the black wheel for that. But it's not only the T-bar supports, it's the printer supports. So you see along the border, the way that we nest these dentures in the printer is heel to platform, angled about 70, 80 degrees. And so all my supports are only along the borders. I don't have supports anywhere but on the borders. And I have them about every millimeter or so. And I got to smooth those supports down. And I use that black Aeroflex fine wheel for that. Once you have smoothed all the supports, then you got to clean it again. And whether it's IPA or the Rodin cleanser, or, you know, take it over and run water over it in the sink or throw it in the ultrasonic with some distilled water. Any way to get the dust off, right? It's cured. We've already cleaned all the resin off. All I'm cleaning off here is the dust I generated from smoothing those supports. And what I typically do, as you can see, is I keep a little jar of solvent and I'll just dip a toothbrush in and scrub it off. One thing we have to remember, though, is that once you add liquid back to this surface to clean it, you really want to dry it well. So you really want to give it a good blast of air, let it sit on the bench for 10 minutes, whatever, to make sure all the liquid is evaporated out of the pores of this resin. Remember, it's not fully cured yet. So, but that's an advantage for one of our following steps. But this is what I'm looking for. I'm looking for a good bubblegum flavor. Pac-Dent has multiple shades of this Denture Base 2.0, including a good ethnic shade, but you can see the before and afters. We see all the nibs, and you see that I've smoothed it all down, and I've cleaned up all the dust. I'm going to do the same thing with the teeth. And you see the bottom left picture, that's the Aeroflex Superfine. That's what I use 99% of the time. There was a time when I used the buff wheel, the middle picture, the Scotch-Brite type wheel, and that works, but it's just too big for me, and it throws fibers everywhere. So I like the Aeroflex for this. It's a combination rubber, a Scotch-Brite type of wheel, and so it doesn't throw fibers, it lasts longer, and it does just a good job. And again, this is super light touch, very low, 10,000 RPMs, and it takes me less than a minute or two per segment to get those nibs off of there. Once I have, the tooth segments smoothed off, then I'm going to do the same thing I did with the denture base. I'm going to clean that off and get that dust off of there. And once I have the dust off and I'm ready to put the teeth into the denture base, that's when I pick up the next huge time saving. So in every other system out there, at this point, we're grabbing the same bottle of pink stuff we printed the base in, or some specialty pink stuff to bond these teeth in. So we would put that pink stuff in the pockets, we would seed it, and we have to meticulously clean up that excess pink right before we zap it with the little light, because you don't want it on your teeth and you don't want it filling up the margins. Well, when they brought this stuff out, they called me and said, look, this new glaze is also designed to be a bonding resin for the denture teeth. And I said, really? And so I, got the instructions, the guidance on how to use it, and it changed my world, guys. I mean, you literally, no more syringes, no more brushes, no more bottles. I'm taking the dropper bottle and I'm just dropping a couple of drops into each pocket of my segments, seeding the segment into that, and then taking my brush and whatever excess, I'm wiping it over the gingiva, over the teeth, because I use this stuff on the gingiva so I don't have to polish it later. We're painting this on in the green state, remember. It's not fully cured yet. So this glaze actually soaks into the denture surface 10 or 15 microns. And when we cure it, it locks it in there. This is as close to a ceramic glaze type of dynamic as we can get. And so having the bonding resin and the glaze being the same material, it drastically reduces the time it takes to seat these segments and tack them down. Love, love, love this workflow. This is a go-to for me. The little lab that I do my test and work in is in the back of my dentist office. And my dentist, if I told them we had to start using pink again, they'd go nuts. But you can see I do take time to make sure the glaze is out of the gingival margin, and not too much in the occlusal groove. But I'll take a pair of hemostats and hold the denture and get the glaze on the lingual side as well. But I do it in segments. If you notice that I was tacking a quadrant and then I'd put the next teeth in, and I would spread the glaze out and tack that quadrant. And so you tack as you go, because you don't want that glaze to evaporate before you get finished with the whole denture. And then I'll do the lingual side, the tongue side, and maybe two segments, half and half. But once I'm done and the glaze is fully covered all surfaces and it's tacked in place, then I can go over to the auto flash. And remember, the T-bars are off, the denture's quote unquote polished. And once it comes out of the auto flash at 4,500 cycles, which is what? Somebody help me, maybe around 7 minutes. The denture's ready to go to the mouth. There's nothing else that we have to do to that denture. And that's what I mean, the most efficient, the most predictable workflow out there is the ability to, not have T-bars and use that glaze as a bonding resin. Fully relineable if your doc wants to do a soft reline, or if you want to do a soft reline. They developed a soft reline kit specifically for the printed resin that works fantastic. It's an easy cartridge system, and you just have to follow the steps, right? And the steps are, you have to clean it well, and you do want to create a little bevel, but then this Scotch-Brite step is important. Get that big Scotch-Brite wheel and give it a good buffing on the inside. Painting the primer, also critical. You want to paint a good coat of the primer, and then it's got to dry I let mine dry 5 minutes. I want it to be good and dry before we put that reline material in. And then you can take it to the mouth or go, onto the model, however you're doing it. And it's about a 5-minute set time. If you do those steps properly, this stuff, you have to cut it out. It just will not peel out. But if you have this and it's peeling out, then you go back to step 2 and 3 again. That's generally what is the main reason. So, that's the denture workflow, guys. I'm going to be in Chicago. I'm going to be doing I think we're going to be in there 2.5 hours. They've got 4 workstations set up in a room, Pac-Dent does, and I'm going to be doing the digital dentures. I'm going to be doing what I just showed you, hands-on, so you can get a good close-up look if you're in Chicago. But there are also a couple of 3 other guys in there talking about a lot of other things like customization, all on X stuff, printing, and worth a visit to the Pac-Dent room for that. And what are some other things that I'm doing with the Rodin materials? Well, acrylic partials. Now, this isn't flexible partials. This is an acrylic partial. This is a flipper. This is a stay plate. And, designed in 3Shape or Exocad and printed out of Rodin denture base. And so these aren't flexible. These would be a rigid appliance, class 1, 2, 3, or 4. Doesn't matter. And if this material is that much stronger than traditional acrylic, why not? So design them, print them, and if you need more retention, right, what I do is I need a model for this. So whether I got to print a model, pour a model, I'm going to take a model and I'm going to take a piece of wrought wire and I'm going to bend that clasp and stick it down to the model first. Then I'll scan the model to design the acrylic partial with. So I'm designing this flipper over a model that has a piece of wire on it so that when that partial prints, it's got a groove on the underside. And then we just pick it up with tooth bonding material or with more base material, probably better. Just, pour a little bit of the denture base out and, just fill up that groove with the clasp to hold it in place and then cure it again. And, that works and it's great and they fit great and they're super durable. They're more durable than regular acrylic and it's just an easy way to do them. Everybody wants to talk about flexibles, right? And Pac-Dent does have a flexible now. It's called the BioArch. And it's great. And it answers a lot of these pain points that we've had with flexible partials in the past. They take long and, you got to have equipment and hard to polish, can't repair, blah, blah, blah. And, what they've done is to create a printable resin, one component, prints pretty quickly. And we can design that framework same as we do every other one, and we print it. And we print the teeth out of Titan, and we bond them to place. Now, I'm going to be going through this hands-on directly in the Zahn Ballroom on Thursday in Chicago. So if you're there and you want to see this close up, come by, and we'll go through this and show you this resin. I've been using it. Now, they sent me the test bottle, I don't know, 8 or 9 months ago, and we've done once I got FDA clearance, we started doing it on real patients in the practice, and we've done over 30, and the results have been fantastic. It's just been an awesome workflow. And, it's, again, designing it, we're nesting it, we're supporting it, we're cleaning it with guess what, right? Then we're smoothing the supports, we're dry fitting the teeth, and we're seating and tacking the teeth. Now, this is a change from the dentures. When I'm doing the BioArch, I seat and tack the teeth with the BioArch resin, the same stuff I print the partial out of. And the reason we're doing that is that we're trying to avoid adding a more rigid material to the system. And, if I put that glaze in that pocket, surely it will bond the tooth to the base, but it's also a rigid layer that could potentially crack due to the flexibility of the base. So I use the same base. This is also a process where I don't put the glaze on the base. I don't mind putting it on the teeth, to give them a good glaze, but I don't put the glaze on. I polish the gingival part because, again, putting the glaze on the gingival would stiffen it up and two dissimilar materials. So, again, I'm not going to go through all the videos on all those steps, but I'll just give you a brief overview of what this looks like. You can see that it's, it goes in the printer easy. And, I printed it, I'm cleaning it, I'm smoothing those teeth, smoothing the nibs. I do leave the T-bars on all my flexibles. And once I have it dry fitted well, then I bond it in with the same resin I printed it out of, and I just put it in a little syringe to make it a little neater for me, and just put enough in the pocket, seat the teeth down, make sure the excess is cleaned, and then tack it in place. And at this point, I can go cure it and then come out and polish it later, or I think I'll put the glaze on the teeth, but goes in the cycle, 4,500 cycles. And when it comes out, then I can cut the T-bars off, and then I'm going to start smoothing everything down and then polishing. And I just use these Wagner Panther wheels. They're great, and that paste is good. And then a soft cotton buff to high shine it. And, it's pretty cool. So I'm a fan, and, it's brand new, so time will tell, but on the outside, it looks good, guys. And come see it in Chicago. Here's one of the cases that we did in the practice. This guy had gas partial, was tired of all the issues associated with that. So this one we designed in Exocad, and it's either or. Partials may be a little better in Exocad. Dentures I like 3Shape for. But I also use NLab sometimes, depending on the lab or the dental office. But, in Exocad, we're going to do the teeth first, and then we'll design, the framework. But the sequence, the steps are almost identical. What tool works best in your hands? Which one do you like? And, in essence, we're just engaging the undercuts where we can. I'm doing a program for Argon and also for 3Shape, and we're going to talk more about designing. I'm going to mention this in my Zahn Ballroom presentation too. So we'll talk about those clasps, the theories of design, the strategies we use, and all that. But you get the idea. There's some minimum thickness and all the stuff that we'll talk about in Chicago. But we've designed it here in Exocad, and then printed it and placed it, and this guy loved it. And I'm a fan of printing two of everything just in case. Why not? It's there, and it doesn't take that much more time or that much more material to have that backup plan. And this guy was ecstatic, and he's been wearing this one for almost 3 months, and very happy, very content. Loves the weight, loves the feel, loves the fact that it's not silver, and so very successful. And we've got a number of those. So, I'm using the BioArch for that. I'm using the Denture Base 2 or the Titan primarily for digital dentures, overdentures, and for implant temporaries. And somebody says, okay, is it strong enough? Well, yeah, it is. These were some tests that came out a few months ago. Dr. Giordano is just, he's just one of those smart guys we love having around, right? Because he validates what we're thinking. This stuff feels pretty strong. Is it? Yeah, it is. So nice to have the validation. Nice to know that, I can have a denture that's strong enough to not be a regular denture, but also be an overdenture. So maybe fewer chances of these things breaking around those attachments, whether it's locator or conus or anything like that. So I do it for that, and I do it for these prototypes. Now, for these prototypes, I don't necessarily print the pink and the white. 9 times out of 10 will print these out of Titan and then just paint pink on them. So that's the easiest way. I don't, I can't come up with a reasoning in my mind why I would do a 2-piece, but some people do, and it's okay if you have the room. But this is a temporary thing, and it's just easy to design it as a 1-piece and just paint pink on it. And so most all of my prototypes, whether it's a denture try-in or an implant prototype, we print out of Titan, and it has a strength, has a durability, but yet, it's forgiving enough to be a good use for that. So that's the workflow, right? We're going to design it, we're going to print it, we're going to clean it, we're going to assemble it, and, maybe we polish the partials, but maybe we just put glaze on for the denture, so there's literally no finishing to do. And so this is all good. If you're buying into this and you add this, you go buy a couple of printers, you buy the resin, you have the software, and you get busy. And at some point, you might say to me, I'm talking to my doctors about it, but they don't really want to try anything new. And I said, look, we don't talk to doctors about the fact that we're printing a really cool digital denture. We talk to doctors about, doc, we've always done dentures in 6, 7, 8 appointments because of these things that we have to do. How about if we do it in 3? And so we talk about workflows, not the product. And so when I do lectures to dentists on behalf of labs still, and I talk about the reference denture workflow. It's a 3-appointment process, could be 2 appointments. We're using the patient's existing denture to take our preliminary records, and we're scanning those with the intraoral wand. If it's a no denture patient, no teeth, no denture, then we're doing a little bit of analog work. Maybe maybe we can scan that to make these base plates, but we're basically making a set of base plates and bite rims that we use to take a physical impression that we can scan. So we're doing this one in 4 appointments, and pretty routine. This is not, a lucky every so often we hit it in 4. No, it's 4 appointments. It's almost every single time. And then immediates we should always do digitally because we have that data of those extracted teeth to help guide us as we set the teeth. But when we're done, we're going to print it out of this ecosystem, right? Denture Base 2.0, Titan teeth. And so, again, if you need some help, you need some training, call me. I can come do it. If you need me to do a lecture for your dentist to get them excited, I can do it. Scan the QR code. There's a handout folder with all of the Rodin resources, the instruction manuals and the materials and all that stuff. And, take that information and, I would order that today before that goes away. So thank you, guys. Plenty of time for questions.
Okay. Thank you, Jimmy, for that. Just wanted to let you guys know that, if you're interested in that promotion that Jimmy just talked about, you can reach out to your Argon or Argon Canada sales rep. So yes, the deal is available in Canada as well. Let me go ahead and answer some of these, or help Jimmy answer some of these questions that we had. And thank you guys for putting them in the chat. Jimmy, first question from Todd. How do you dispose of the resin cleaner?
Right now, the same way we do alcohol, right? We put it in a big container and we pay a service to come get it, and they take it off and redistill it. I don't know how they handle this stuff. I would look to Pac-Dent to maybe come up with a good solution for that, but it's not inert. It's still a solvent, right? And I still wouldn't want to pour it down my drain, but it's not flammable, so I'm not as worried about that. But maybe one of the engineers at Pac-Dent can tell us a good way to dispose of it. But right now, we treat it just like we treated the alcohol.
Okay, yeah, and from our IFU, it's a similar process to what Jimmy described. So it's kind of standard chemical disposal protocols for that. Another question, does BioArch require mechanical retention for the teeth like other Flex RPD materials?
Nope. Nope. The bond is the ecosystem, the chemistry in the Titan tooth and the BioArch. There's some molecules in there, and again, I'm no engineer, and we can ask the chemical engineer at Pac-Dent to explain it if we want to. I don't care. I can just tell you that I've bonded them and taken a pair of pliers and try to get them out, and I cannot, and I'm okay with that.
Okay. Another question, when applying the glaze, do air bubbles remain on the base?
Yeah, it's a great question. They can. Remember me saying that I apply the glaze in quadrants and then I tack it with my light. And the reason I'm doing that is because it starts to evaporate rather quickly. And when it starts to evaporate, then your brush will start dragging and it will create those brush strokes or bubbles. And that's why you see those pop up. So you want your brush to stay wet, and you want to do small sections and tack them as you go so that it doesn't evaporate and you don't create those bubbles.
Okay. For post-curing, is it appropriate to use a curing unit which does not have nitrogen if validated by the manufacturer? In your experience, is there considerable advantage to nitrogen curing?
I take this from conversations I've had with the chemical engineers that develop these resins, and they have all told me the same thing. Everything cures better in an oxygen-free environment. Now, resins have been developed to not need the oxygen, that they will cure, but the engineers have said they cure better even under nitrogen. Now, I've cured some without nitrogen and some with, and I really can't tell a difference. So to answer your question, I don't think it's required, but I do it simply because the auto flash is fast. I know the new Stegall cure has a vacuum pump in it, so you could cure it without nitrogen just using a vacuum pump. That would be a cool way to do it as well.
Okay. Any alternatives to ExoCAD, Medit, or Blue Sky Plan? What are the advantages ExoCAD has over these softwares?
To design dentures? Think that's the question?
Sure.
Um, to me, the tools to design dentures are best in 3Shape, and that's primarily centered around the gingival tools. And I know ExoCAD's working to up their game. I have both, and I use both for various things. But when it comes to just dentures, I am almost 100% 3Shape, unless I'm working with somebody who just has InLab or just has ExoCAD. I'm no ExoCAD expert. There are plenty of other people out there way better than me at ExoCAD, but I use ExoCAD for partials, cast partials, and a lot of implant stuff. But I think 3Shape by far is the best software for dentures. 3Shape.
Okay, thank you. How long will the glaze last on the denture?
Well, because it's soaked into the surface 10 or 15 microns, I anticipate a long life. And what have I got into it? The N2F glaze it just came out, last year, Andrew, I think,
Correct.
the year before. And so, I got a year maybe, but similar glazes that we do the same way, I've done for almost 6 years, and I just don't see that glaze coming off. Now it's only 10 or 15 microns, so wear depends on the patient's habit, how scrubbing it, what they're eating, all that. But certainly, we won't see the degradation in that glaze like we saw in all the other glazes we've used in the past, simply because in the past all the other glazes we've used were painted on the surface of a cured denture. So they were surface glazes. We call it shellacking. Right here, I'm soaking in, so I anticipate a much longer life.
Thank you. And how do you get rid of the chalkiness if you have over-soaked an IPA? Can you?
Yeah, I'll try to buff it off. If it don't come off, I just print another segment. I ain't gonna fight it, brother. It's aggravating. I can't stand it, but that's the nature of having ceramic in your resin. And I'll
Okay.
use a Scotch-Brite wheel. That's what I'll do. I'll hit it with a Scotch-Brite wheel. If it comes off, it comes off. But I don't want to take too much anatomy out of the tooth, so a lot of times I'll just print it again.
Yeah, Jimmy, someone's asking for the link to the Wagner brushes or the wire nippers. Is that something that you'd be able to provide, or maybe we can give it their
I
team?
think in the handout folder I have a sheet called Jimmy's Materials, and the wire nippers I get at Amazon. The Wagner wheels are sold exclusively through Noach Dental because they purchased Wagner last year. And so call Sean and the team at Noach Dental to get the Wagner wheels.
Okay. Looks like one more question. Can the glaze be reapplied after long-term wear?
Yes, it can, but remember, at that point, it's like all the rest of the glazes in the world. It's a surface glaze because our denture or tooth is fully cured and it's not going to soak into anything. What I'll do if I need to add glaze after the fact is that I'll take the Aeroflex wheel and I'll just buff up the area I need to add glaze and then paint it on that and then cure it, again in the auto flash. But I know and I realize it's just sitting on the surface. So not as ideal, but yes, it does work.
Okay, thank you for that. Okay, any last questions for Jimmy? Going once, going twice. Okay, well, it looks like that'll be all. Again, thank you again, Jimmy, and then thank you all attendees from the Pac-Dent and the Argon team for attending our webinar. We hope that, you learned something, and yes, we hope to see some of you guys in Chicago. And I set some of the info in the chat for some of the programs Jimmy referred to. Thank you again, and, enjoy the rest of your day, guys. Thank you.
See you in Chicago, guys.